chapter 8, and I put down that we're going to be looking at from verses 40 to 56. That's actually giving you the context. We're only going to be looking at a few verses, but I think important verses within these two things that happen. Verse 40, now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. Now here's what we're going to be looking at this morning within this. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, or hemorrhaging, but no one could heal her. So 12 years. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and they're pressing against you. But Jesus said, someone touched me. I know that the power has gone out of me. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, listen to this, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Let's pray. God, we are thankful this morning that we can not just come to you as we are, but you come to us. Father, it is, as we so often today try to figure out what it is that we're supposed to be doing as your people, sometimes we complicate the simple. Father, we're thankful that Jesus went to where the people were. I pray that you will not only teach us that this morning, but God, that you will transform us and help us to remember that that's what you've called us to do also. So we commit ourselves to you now in Christ's name. Amen. I have occasion to be in community meetings at times, meetings with other clergy that I try not to spend a lot of time with them for a lot of reasons, but this particular group of clergy I happen to like, and we were together, but they decided to have a community forum so we could listen to the community to see what people thought that we needed to be doing within the community. Now, there was one guy there that was under the age of 30. Everybody else was my generation or older. So, of course, it started. One guy started to pontificate, and hopefully you all would be proud of me because I wanted to get up and wring the guy's neck, and I just stayed quiet. I did text another friend of mine that was like, I said, what's this dude's problem? And he started in. Well, I have to tell you something. When I was growing up, we met face to face. We didn't have any of this technology stuff. We didn't text. We didn't Facebook. We didn't tweet. We talked to one another. And if I want to communicate and talk to one another. And I thought to myself, wow. Like either I think younger or this guy's off his rocker. Well then, no, I realized that I may have been the only one that was off my rocker because more people started this. I did raise my hand later on. I said, look, we have a little issue here. Because you want people to communicate with you your way. It wasn't too long ago, I wasn't around him, but I've heard this, that when TV first came out, that people were talking about how society was going to be destroyed. In fact, when the motor car first came out, it was evil. There are groups that still think it's evil. They're called the Amish, and they travel in horse and buggies. There are people that talked about how this was going to destroy society. The airplane was going to destroy society. People said, if God wanted us to fly, he would have done what? Given us wings. I had a guy say that to me one day at the back door years ago because he wouldn't let his wife get her ears pierced. You know what he said? God wanted a woman to have her ears pierced. He would put holes in her ears. I said, is that the same thing if God wants us to fly? He would have given us wings? I said, that's dumb. He didn't come back. But anyway, the point is that we fight against this stuff, and I saw this happening again, and I thought, we are not going, and we're talking about the church, and it's like we want everybody to come to us, and we want them to come to us on our terms, because this is how we've always done it. And yet, I can tell you that the kids are communicating, they are connected, and we have to go to the other side of the wall to find out what they're doing. We have to go meet them there. We can no longer expect people to come to us. And if you look at the ministry of Jesus, he didn't do that. Was he in the synagogue? Some? Yeah. You know who he was mostly talking to in there? Jewish people. And they were arguing with him about how he wasn't the Messiah. But Jesus was the guy who reached people that other people didn't want to reach. Let me say that again. Jesus reached people that other people didn't want to reach. One more time. Jesus reached people that other people didn't want to reach. See, the synagogue, they were set because they were all Jews. You weren't allowed to come in there if you were a Gentile. They had their thing together. They had their four walls. They were happy. Meanwhile, Jesus is going out and doing some weird stuff. He was doing some really strange stuff, talking to people he wasn't supposed to be talking to. He talked to women. He had women that were his followers. And that didn't happen in that culture. Jesus reached people that other people didn't want to reach. And there's a story that we have for years sung a hymn as a result of it. About the hem of his garment. And if I could touch the hem of his garment. And we don't really even know what that means. I'm not even sure the person that wrote the hymn understood what was going on in this story. So it's real important for us to get the setting. And we're going to see how Jesus reached people that other people didn't want to reach. We're going to find out that that's what he's called us to do too, which means we've got to get to the other side of the wall. So here's what's been happening thus far, and you can read Luke chapter 8 before this. Several things have happened. Jesus he's had his first encounter with the disciples on the water. Or if you remember, there were two encounters on the water. The first one, he was on the boat. And they were all freaking out. Jesus is on the back asleep, and boat's being tossed, and he's asleep. He's snoring away, and the disciples are like, Jesus, help! And he gets up and he calms the storm, and they're like, whoa. Well, the next time, their next lesson on the water that was later on, of course, he wasn't with them on the boat. They were alone. So he's not only has he calmed the storm, but now when he's gotten off of the boat, there is a demon-possessed man. And he cast out the demons. He's talked earlier about the parable of the sower. And so we get to this point, though, now where Jesus is at, as he's coming. It's interesting, and I want to go through this story and look at some parts of this that we sometimes possibly miss. And I want you to jump back up to verse 40. Now, it says, now when Jesus returned, so he comes back across. Notice what it says. A crowd welcomed him. Now, they came to where he was at, but that's because he was always going where they were. They knew he was going to be there. He was out among the people. They come back, and it said the crowd welcomed him. Why? Because they knew he was coming. They literally expected that Jesus was going to be there. He wasn't a rabbi that was sitting in the synagogue. He wasn't part of the Sanhedrin that everybody came to them and everybody called them these wonderful titles and everybody came to them for advice and for judgment and all of that. No, they were expecting this guy Jesus to come to them. And so a crowd came to where he was at because they knew he was going to be there. So they were all expecting him. Then all of a sudden, we see this weird thing happen. This guy named Jairus, what was he? What does it say he was? A synagogue leader. He was a synagogue leader. In the Greek it says, are you ready? He was a leader in the synagogue. Some of you, he was a leader in the synagogue. So here he is, the leader in the synagogue, and he comes to Jesus. Now you already know if he's coming to Jesus and he's a leader in the synagogue, he's already going to take criticism. But he comes to Jesus because it's amazing how people will put religion and put judgment aside when something's going on with their kid. And Jesus was his only hope. He came, and notice what he does. He falls at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl about 12, was dying. Now, here's the story. So get what's happened. He's been on the water with the disciples. He's cast out the demons. He's given the parable of the sower. He's now come back across. There's a crowd that has been expecting him, and they see Jairus come, and they probably, many of them knew who he was as a leader in the synagogue. He falls down, which doesn't happen with a leader in the synagogue. He's begging Jesus to come to them, and so Jesus goes on his way. He goes to where the person who's sick is at. But it's often when you're on your way that other stuff happens. Here it is. It says, as he was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. People wanted to be around Jesus. Why? Because Jesus reached out to people that other people didn't want to reach. Jesus reached out to other people that other people didn't want to reach. So they came to him. Remember the first miracle? To me, the most powerful thing, the first miracle about Jesus, performing turning the water into wine at the very first miracle. It literally says that him and his disciples were invited guests to the wedding. That's my favorite part. They wanted to be around him. There's a lot of Christians I don't want to be around. And the reason why a lot of people don't want to be around Jesus is because of some of the people that claim to know Jesus. Because they're miserable and boring and all the other stuff and judgmental and all of that. And we wonder why do people don't want to be around me? The people wanted to be around Jesus. They were attracted to him. So this crowd is crushing in on him. And it says, and a woman who was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. Let me stop. She was hemorrhaging. Now let me tell you what happens in this culture. Monthly, there was that time in the month where each woman was considered ceremonially unclean, especially in Old Testament law. That means that they literally had to be isolated. Almost like, remember the story of the lepers? The lepers had to cry unclean, but it was a permanent thing where they couldn't be around people and they didn't experience human touch. There was a ceremonial time for the ceremonial cleansing time when the woman was considered to be unclean. Okay? So this woman had been dealing with whatever this was for 12 years. Okay? You think about that. That's a long time. She had literally, as we'll see in a minute, tried everything. Had probably been to doctors and all of those kinds of things. And so what happened as a result of this, there's a good chance that this woman was, I'm going to say, shamed. Guarantee you she was shamed. Nobody wanted to be around her. She probably got blamed, and I guarantee you she got gamed. And I'll tell you why she got gamed. Because I'm sure there were doctors that said, tell you what, we could probably cure this, and they took her money, and then nothing happened. So she is desperate. She's probably isolated, probably living alone. Nobody wants to be around her, which is why, and she's been dealing with this hemorrhaging thing for 12 years. Just let that sink in for a minute. 12 years. And desperate situation, she's trying to get to Jesus. So you got a desperate father who gets to Jesus and says, I need you to come to her. She's going to die. And so he's on his way as a crowd is crushing in. There's this woman who was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. And it said, but no one could heal her. Not one person. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. And immediately her bleeding stopped. Okay. I want to stop here for a moment. There is some conflicting information about what kind of garment Jesus may have been wearing. And I don't want to go farther than the text does. Several places people make a big deal, and it really could be because of the way the Greek reads. It was sort of like not the hem, but just like the outer part of this garment. Now, a couple researchers say that Jesus may have been wearing a rabbinical robe in which it was called the talit, and hanging off of it were 613 different tassels that represented the commandments of God and all of that. And so Jesus was there. She was looking at him as an authority and figured, if I could just reach out and touch this, it's like touching God in a sense, then something's going to happen. So I don't know whether it was just she was trying to grab onto him and like, hey, Jesus, or whether it was really, I just got to touch this. Like, I don't need to see him. Now, why does she only want to reach out and touch it? Because she's not supposed to touch the man. She's not supposed to touch anybody because she's unclean. Just like the lepers were unclean. Just like the woman caught in the act of adultery, but we don't know whatever happened to the guy, was unclean. Just like the woman at the well was somebody that they didn't talk to because she was up. Just like the story of the Good Samaritan. The guy was unclean because he was beaten up. You don't touch that. And remember, two of the religious leaders in that story went by and didn't touch the guy because they were on their way to church. She came up behind him and she touched the edge of his cloak. Just touched it. And immediately her bleeding stopped. So she was thinking to herself, I believe he's who he says he is. I believe that he can heal. If I can just touch it, like nobody will see me and everything's going to be okay. And I never have to have any conversation. And I'm not going to, because the crowd was pressing in. So you could almost see this woman kind of squeaking through. Nobody recognized her because they're yelling at Jesus and they're focused on him. And she reaches out and she touches it and the bleeding stopped. And she probably went, wow. Could you imagine? After 12 years of being shamed and blamed and gamed. After 12 years of people taking whatever money that she had. After 12 years of being isolated and nobody wanting to be around her. And the moment that she just touched the outer part of his, the fringe is the way the Greek reads. The fringe, just the fringe. She's healed. And she was going to be about her business and leave, and nobody was going to say anything. But that's not how it works, is it? Who touched me? Jesus asked. Now, they all denied it. They were like, wait a minute, what do you mean who touched you? It says they all denied it. And it's funny because it says, who touched me? And Peter says, look, Jesus, Master, listen. The people are crowding and pressing against you. Like, what? Of course people touched you. What do you mean, who touched you? Now, did Jesus know who touched him? Yes or no? Of course he did. What's he trying to do? He's trying to get to the final point of this. He says, who touched me? And they're, oh, well, we didn't do it, Jesus, and you're crazy because there's all kinds of people touching you. So what do you mean, who touched you? And then he says, someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Wow. Some type of supernatural thing has just occurred, and I know it happened, and it wasn't the normal people touching me because there was a connection that occurred, and when that connection occurred, something has changed. I know the power has gone out of me. Who was it? And notice, then the woman. Did you see this? Seeing that it could not what? Go unnoticed. She had been unnoticed for 12 years. She just wanted relief. But now she's going to be called right out of the middle of this. Now everybody's going to notice her, and for the wrong reason. Notice what she says. She came trembling. And she falls at his feet. Remember the beginning part? Jairus came and did what? He fell at his feet. She's trembling, falling at his feet because she thinks she is now in trouble. He came trembling, fell at his feet. And then she says, look at this. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. She told the entire story to this group. And I would imagine that some people were like, she touched him. How many times did the disciples say, why are you letting that woman touch you? Why did you touch that person? Why did Jesus touch the lepers? He could have just healed people without saying anything. What do you mean she touched you? She says, I touched this and I was instantly healed. And I can't tell you how many times I have read this story. And the next word, when I was preparing for this message, absolutely, you could have knocked me over with a feather. Then he said to her, daughter, wait a minute. How many times did Jesus say, woman? And we saw that, when we read it now and through today's lenses, we look at woman, it's like, woman, get over here, like some kind of Archie Bunker thing. But it was actually a respected term. But he could have said, woman, your faith, madam, your faith has made you whole. But he called her daughter. Because Jesus not only reached people that others didn't want to reach, he also called other people family that other people wouldn't call family. He called people family that other people wouldn't call family. He reached out to other people that other people wouldn't reach. And he literally, in front of all these people, looked at her and said, daughter, I'm your father. Your faith has healed you. And then he says something for her to go in that she hasn't experienced in 12 years. Go in peace. Wow. A different take on the story. I look at that and I'm thinking to myself, how many people on that side, and on that side, and on that side, and on that side are shamed? How many of them have been shamed by family? How many of them have been shamed by religion? You want to see something really bad? Go ahead. Everybody talks about the Catholic Church. Go ahead and now Google what's going on in the Southern Baptist Convention and all the abuse allegations that they've now had to check into. You know how many people have had issues because of religion and the church? There are people now, just because, and I don't want to be physical abuse, this spiritual abuse, they don't even want to go back. They don't want to be a part of it because they've been shamed or they've been blamed or they've even been gamed by it. They're the people that are on the other side of the walls. And unlike that gentleman who happened to be in our meeting, we no longer have the luxury, nor should we have ever had the luxury of saying, well, we got to bring them in here. Because Jesus didn't do that. He went out to where they were, and he actually loved people that other people wouldn't love. He touched people that other people wouldn't touch. He reached people that other people wouldn't reach. He called people family that other people wouldn't call family. Jesus did something totally different than most of us are doing in our churches today. Because we like people that are like us. Thank God he didn't do that. You say, well, wait a minute. Are you saying there's no shame and blame? No, there is. Because that's how we get into the church. But we cannot forget where we come from. We can't forget that there is a world of people that are out there that are hurting, that are mentally ill, that are trying to figure this stuff out. This week we were talking, a friend of mine who many of you have heard me talk about him, whose son took his own life in October of last year. He texted me and he said, did you see Todd Tongan died? Well, he and I had happened to have been in a restaurant in Cooper City when Tongan was in there one day. And we talked to him. He was a nice gentleman. But when I first saw the report came out, I read it because I deal with this stuff. I looked at it and I told my friend, I said, he took his own life. He goes, how do you know that? I said, I'm telling you, by the language that they're using in here, it's going to come out in a couple of days. And sure enough, he did. See, people could look normal. People could look healthy. People could look like they got everything going for them in the world. And see, that's one of the negatives of this, because I could get on Facebook and I could tell you how wonderful my life is and my relationship is and my health is and all of these things. I could do filters on Instagram and all of those kinds of things and make you think everything is going wonderful. But meanwhile, I'm ashamed. Meanwhile, I live with my shame. Maybe shame from childhood. Maybe shame from something that I've done. Maybe shame with something that my parents said to me. And until we can use these things to meet people where they are and to get honest. See, Jesus met people where they were and he loved them there. That was the point. People somehow believe today that they have to change for us to love them. That they have to, if you just get rid of your shame and then come see us, then you'll look good and you'll fit in this little perfect box. If you change and you do this and this and this and you perform in this way, then that's going to be great. Then we'll love you and then you can be a part of us. I don't know about you, but I am so thankful that Jesus never did that. And as we continue to move ahead, we have to be willing, like he did, to reach people that others don't want to reach. To love people that others don't want to love. To call people family that other people wouldn't call family. And you know what that means? It means it's uncomfortable because we have to go to the other side of the wall. We have to scale it and get over it. If we're more concerned about coming together and what's going on in here, it's not that we shouldn't have fellowship and all of those kinds of things, but if we're more concerned about what's going on in here, we should come in here and get our kind of injection for the week and then boom, be out there. Because you have opportunity to reach people that I will never have opportunity to reach, and I have opportunity to reach people that you'll never have opportunity to reach. And I think one of the most important parts in this text is when it said when Jesus was on his way. Jesus never had to go out of his way all the time because he was always on his way to see people and to be where they were at. You know, we always for years go to the Baptist church, every missions conference, go ye therefore and teach all nations, make disciples. And they always emphasized in Matthew 28 the word go. But literally the main clause in there is make disciples. It says, and the way the Greek reads go, it's not start going. It literally says, as you continue to go, start making disciples. In other words, the assumption is you're already going about your business. You're already meeting people. You're already out there. You're talking to people, well, maybe at the gas station, maybe not, but you're talking to people in the grocery line. You're talking to, this morning I talked to my Lyft driver all the way in here, and turned out he was a Christian, and we were talking about church and other stuff, and a different perspective from somebody that was under the age of 30. And so everywhere that you go, you have the opportunity to meet people. Now, you have the opportunity to connect with people even more. And I was talking about this. I said, what do you think about technology? He said, it's neither good nor bad. It's how you use it. I was like, right. That's it. It's like everything else. The question is, am I going to use it to reach the people that others don't want to reach? Am I going to get on the other side of the wall, however I have to do it, to love the people that other people don't want to love? Am I going to get on the other side of the wall to call people family who other people don't want to call family? When people criticize the church, I go, yeah, I know. We're a pretty messed up bunch. I'm not just talking about here, the church in general. And that's where I say it's like a family. At Thanksgiving, talking about politics. You got all personalities involved. You got the crazy uncle that's there, the crazy aunt. I realized one day that I'm actually the crazy one in mine, but it's a kind of a tough realization. But you have all the different players that are there. The bigger the crowd, the more players you have, and it's all one giant, messed up, confusing, dysfunctional family. And that is what Jesus wants us to be as his people. We're going to be one confusing, messed up, dysfunctional, not always on, not always nice, often temperamental, weird, confusing family. Why? Because we're humans. And thankfully, he came to us and met us where we are. And he says, you know what I want you to do? I want you to go to the other side of the wall and meet people where they are. Because I loved you when other people wouldn't love you. I reached out to you when other people wouldn't reach out to you. I called you family when other people may not have wanted you as family. Now go out and do likewise.